Um, Whenever you're ready, Roshni.
Yes, we're live now.
Awesome. So what we are going to do today is a lot of people keep asking me questions about how do I start, what do I need to learn, what are the core concepts I need to learn. So what I'm going to do today is I have literally compiled all the resources you need together to start learning UX and start becoming good at it. Okay. So what the focus of today's session is purely to look at what is the minimum required skills and the knowledge that you need to get going in your career. So with that said, let's start. If you go on to the next slide, please. Okay. So as we start thinking about what we want to learn, I think the first thing that I want all of us to appreciate is how technology changes over time. So if you think about, the year 1909, this was the first military aircraft that was created. Okay. At best, it would go 44 miles and its maximum speed was about 20 miles per hour. So it would take 2 hours to go 40 miles. Okay. And that was what the beginning was. So if somebody wanted to learn how to fly at that time, learn to fly a military plane, literally they would say, this is the plane, these are the two levers, join, fly. Now, if you crashed, good luck, you will learn from it next time around. Okay. Now, if you think about today, what is the technology like today? And this is where the latest plane comes in. So this is where the maximum speed is about 1,200 miles per hour. Okay. So you're talking literally about 100 times or maybe a 50 times faster than what we are doing right now. Okay. It requires thousands of hours of training to fly the plane. And this plane basically can reach its maximum range in about an hour. Okay. So that is the difference in capabilities that is happening. So therefore, the amount of training, the amount of technical components, the amount of learning that somebody has to do before they are even allowed to sit in a plane is very different. So with that in mind, let's look at how UX has changed in the last 20 years. So let's go on to the next slide. So this was way back in 1983. In 83, that was the first website, the World Wide Web. Okay. At its peak, it was getting about 1,000 visits in a whole month. Okay. And at best, all it was doing was it was a series of links. And so this was researchers who were sharing their research papers and their work and their data so other people can download it and play with it. So it was just literally like the equivalent of a Dropbox. Okay. That's what people were using the World Wide Web for. And that was literally the first website that is out here. Okay. If you look at it today, okay, just a simple thing like an Amazon.com, which is, it runs about 2.5 billion visits in just 1 month. Okay. The goal when you're thinking about this website, it is interactive. So it is taking data from the user, processing it in some way, and then giving out some kind of input. It is responsive. That means it works on multiple devices at the same time. Okay. And the way it works is if you add 5 new products, you don't need to create 5 new pages. The system will automatically create new pages for those 5 products. Right. And then if you are, if you also think about it, there are multiple services that are coming in. So it is connecting to FedEx, it is connecting to, logistics, it is connecting to all these different services and giving you predictions about when you'll get your product, whether something is available or not. And it's also what is interesting is it is managing inventory across thousands of locations and telling you where that item is located. Okay. And this product, by the way, comes integrated with machine learning. So when you go there versus when I go there, we will have different experiences based on what we have purchased before and is completely driven by metrics and numbers. Okay. So that is literally the difference. So I would, in the early part of my career, I would talk to people like, hey, how did you start your career? People would say, I started my career because I came in and I was a great graphic designer and I got a job as a UX designer. So I became a UX designer. But really today, for somebody to become a UX designer, these are all the things that are expected. At least these are the products. That's a complexity of product that's out there. Okay. So with that said, let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So what we did was we said, okay, what will it take to get your first job? If you really think about it, it took me about 2 years of formal training in a master's degree program. And then after that, I ended up, working, and took me another 2 to 3 years of learning how the work environment played out. And then, I was at a level where I was reasonably competent. Okay. But today, when you think about it, especially within the pandemic and all that, I'm not sure how many of you have had this experience, but with the pandemic, the senior people just want to work remotely. So there's nobody to mentor the junior people that are coming into the market. And so if somebody was junior and they want to get into the space, it becomes much harder. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to really think, what are the basic skills that are required? Now, there are many, many skills, but I'm just talking about how to start, get your first job. Okay. The first thing you need to do is how to audit or critique a product. So given a product, how do you say where it is wrong and how you can improve it? That is a basic skill. The second skill that you need is how to deliver artifacts, clean artifacts. Okay. So whether it is screens or whether it is a poster, whatever it is, clean artifacts. Okay. The third thing is, how do you create interactive designs? Understand how do you create that interactive experiences where you're collecting data from the user, you're doing some kind of process, you're kind of giving some output to the user. Okay. The last one is, how do you execute a basic visual design? Just for this will take you an easy 1 year if you wanted to do it really, really well. But there are shortcuts that you can do. Okay. And I'm going to talk purely about the shortcuts. Okay. Maybe not, we shouldn't call it shortcuts, but the fast way. So there's a fast way and there's a slow way. So you can either say, I'm going to learn 100% and I'm going to put my application out there, or you can say, listen, I'm going to learn about 50% of the most important stuff, 100% of the most important stuff, and then I'll apply for a job, and then I'll keep learning while I'm doing the job so that I can get my experience as well as grow in the career. So that is the strategy that I'm talking about. So learning all the concepts is you will eventually do it anyways. So now, when you think about what strategies should you learn, we will talk about the knowledge application execution strategy, and we will get a little bit deeper into that. So let's go on the next slide. And again, please feel free to ask me questions if you have. Just raise your hand and I will stop. But you need to turn on your camera so I can answer your question. Okay. So skill number one, how to audit and critique a product. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. This is the basic thing, right? So this is the final thing. So imagine if somebody said, hey, can you take my product and tell me what is wrong? You should be able to say, okay, launch this product, okay, make these fixes and then launch this product. Or you can say, stop launching and then make the significant changes, make all these changes and put them out. Okay. So these are the kinds of decisions you should be able to make just by looking at a product. So what is required is you should be able to evaluate the severity of a problem. So what that means is, given a product, you should be able to say, what are all the experiences on that product? For each of the experience, where are the problems and what is the severity of the problems and which problem should the product team solve first? Okay. This is the bare minimum that needs to be done. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So now the question is, okay, we traditionally talk about Nielsen-Norman's 10 rules, but really, if you're thinking about it, there are almost about 15, 20 different frameworks for how to evaluate. And then, Norman's 10 heuristics are only one of many different frameworks. Okay. And we will share this link with you as well. So, but overall, when you're thinking about this, there are many, many ones, but when you think about, go to the next slide. The simplest one to learn is Nielsen-Norman's 10 guys. Okay. But eventually what you would be expected to do is you'd be expected to go out and understand what the other frameworks are. So you have a very broad understanding of how to evaluate a product. Okay. So for now, if you want to do the 10 heuristics, okay. So all you need to do is there's an article that we put up. So Saurabh, if you can click on the article, we can share this. We're just going to literally share all the content that's out there. So this is a Medium article that I wrote, as well as with the videos out there. So it's very simple. Just read that and understand it. This is where the knowledge component comes. Go back. And then there are 2 other videos that are out there. Okay. So this is one which is the heuristic principles. It's a series of 3 videos. So you can literally look at those 10 videos, those 3 videos, and kind of get your 10 principles in place. Let's go back. And then video 2. Okay, this is the 2 of 3, and then there's a 3 of 3. All right, let's go back. Okay, then there is identifying experiences, which is saying, okay, not everything is equal. Okay, first, before you start evaluating, you need to think, what are the core experiences? Okay, somebody is going to log in. Okay, somebody is going to make a purchase. Okay, somebody is going to have a problem in retrieving their password. So these are all the experiences. So you're identifying all the experiences. So you're basically identifying under what context people will be using your product, and therefore what are the problems that people will have in that context. Okay, so that is what you're looking at. So this is the video 3 of 3, where you're looking at how to identify the context in which the product is going to be used. So this is the third video. Let's go back. And all of these are about 15 to 20-minute long. And then finally, once it is done, just saying that something is a problem is not enough. Saying why that which problem is more severe versus less severe. Okay. So one of the most common challenges is everybody knows 10 heuristics, but how do you apply it? When you apply it, you're basically looking at the product and you're saying, okay, so of these, of all of these heuristics, you might say something is minimalistic, but something, it is violating minimalism because it's really busy, but it's also not telling you what the problem is. So what is the core issue? Okay, what is the core heuristic? Because if you solve that root cause, you will be able to create an amazing product. So learning how to identify that root cause and how to prioritize which one is most important to least important is the next most important skill. Okay, so that is the scoring and prioritizing problem. So go ahead and click on the video. Okay, so this is what it is. So this is a part of the the third video. And so if you literally watch these 3 videos, you are good to go. You will have the knowledge that you need to move forward. Okay, let's go back. And this is the first step towards presenting your work. Okay, and to identifying a problem. Now let's go on to the next slide. And we will probably also be talking a little bit about how do you present your work, but that's very simple compared to looking at the identifying the heuristics, identifying the experiences, and prioritizing which is the bigger problem. That's all you need to basically do at the first level. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And this, if you did it with discipline, if you were doing it full time and you did it with discipline, should probably take you about 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, part-time is probably minimum 6 weeks. Okay, so if you just have to be a little bit disciplined about this. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, now the next skill is how do you deliver an artifact. Okay, in this skill, what you need to do is you need to be able to understand how to do a clean artifact. Now, the question is, most people would, especially when I talk, most people would say, how do I deliver an artifact? I just need to know Figma. No, right? Knowing a tool is very different from knowing how to use the tool to deliver a product. Okay, they're 2 completely different things. So I'll give you some examples. So here are 4 examples. So here's one example where somebody has just created a button and they're literally changing the label inside. They're changing the icon inside and the button is changing automatically. Okay, so you're learning how to create thousands of buttons with one descriptor. So you have one standard pattern and then you can create as many variations of it as you want. Okay, that is designing for scalability. So your product is going to grow. You're going to have many different types of buttons and stuff like that, or many different widgets. How does your widget scale? Okay, now when you think about the next one, you're thinking, how are you standardizing your library? Okay, within the product, within the tool. Okay, so this is where you're thinking, well, what are my core elements? How am I standardizing? Okay, so you don't want to create a lot of extra elements, just the bare minimum. What are the bare minimum elements that I'm working on? Okay, so Simple thing, simple rule of thumb is, okay, you are saying, okay, I'm only going to create 5 different widgets. Okay, now how do you reuse those 5 widgets? That's the thought process that you're thinking. The last one is, the third one is adaptability. Notice how as the view size changes, the information automatically lays out differently. Okay, this is all done in Figma, by the way. So it's not just important to say I'm doing the tool, but it's important to say, okay, if I make the simple test of saying, do you know how to use the tool correctly? Is we will ask you, okay, change this button. Okay, now how much time or effort do you need to spend to change that button in 5 different screens? Okay, is it just in one place, or are you going to 5 different places and change everything? Okay, so that is the thought process that we'll be looking at when you're looking at the tool level. Okay, the last one is responsive. You're looking at as the screen size changes, how does your product change? So your tool is adapting to it, and you're defining the responsiveness. So all of these are things that you're saying, this is what you have to learn when you're creating artifacts. Okay, any questions or thoughts at this level? So there are more of these things that you need to know. Though the trick is, it's not to say that I know Figma, but this is, I know how to use Figma to do all of these things. That is what is important. Okay, now let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so what do you need to learn? Okay, the first thing is the UX tool mindset. The tool mindset is, how should you structure your when you're approaching a project, how should you look at it? So it's a tool mindset is how you're thinking about it. So I'm saying these are all my widgets. Out of this, you're defining what your atoms are, what your molecules are, what your compounds are. So this is my icons. These are together. When I put 2 icons or 2 or 3 of these graphical elements, they become a widget. When I put 2 or 3 of these widgets together, I create a layout. So that is the systematic way that you approach the design. Okay. So the tool mindset, there is a video for that. Fairly simple. Go ahead, click on that. So here, so again, this is about a 30-minute video. Okay. This will basically give you an understanding of how you're going to, think at a higher order, higher level when you're doing your different products. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the screen again. Okay. Then there's tool execution. So within tool execution, how do you execute with speed and scale? So again, it's not, I don't care if somebody comes to me and says it's going to take me 2 days to do the work. I don't care. That's not important, right? What is important for me is, in those 2 days, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? Okay. So how are you going to execute so that the next time around, it's only going to take you 5 minutes? Okay. That is my thought process. So it's important to kind of be able to think at speed and scale. Okay. If I say I've got 10 more screens, are you going to create all those 10 screens from the ground up, or are you going to take a template and modify it to create those 10 new screens? So that is the way I'm thinking about it. So now there is a video that we've got, and there are Figma resources that are designed for beginners. Okay. So you can have access to all of these. So if you can click on the links. Okay. This is a resource library that Figma gives you. Okay. And this is what, ironically, everybody says is UI. UI is a small part of it. Remember, out of the 4 things you're supposed to do, UI is just 1/4 of it. Okay. So here you have all your stuff, how you're going to plan, whatever. So this is a Figma resource library for you that you can use. Let's go back to the presentation. Yeah, Figma for beginners. You have content here as well. Okay. This is a video that is designed for, how beginners should approach it. Let's go back. And then the introduction to design systems. And again, design systems is a foundation. Okay. Let's go back. Let's click on that. Okay. This is again a very brief introduction to how you should think about design systems. Okay. So watch this video. Go back. Let's go back. All right. So this is all you need to do to kind of get the theory for using your tool. Now, of course, there is practice. I will talk about practice afterwards, but these are the things that you need to do. If you just look at this and execute on this, you're good to go. And by the way, what is interesting is, I've had people within the Kickstarter program, all they've done is design audit, and they've got their jobs, their first set of offers, right? So the point being is, if you do it really, really well, don't do everything mediocre or bad. Do some things really, really well so that you can be effective on your day one, and then you can keep learning and getting on your journey. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Now, this is the third skill, that is creating interactive designs. Okay. And this is a little bit more, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So this is where you have to be thinking a little bit more. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So when you're thinking about interactive design, so this is pretty much every modern website does this. What you're doing is you're collecting some kind of data from the user, okay? Or you're creating a prompt to entice the person to give you information. You're storing that information somewhere, or you're processing that information, okay? And then based on that output, you're giving some kind of data. In the middle, you might actually work with 10 different softwares, 10 different agents. You might collect data from different systems and all that stuff, and then collate it into a way that will make sense for the user and present it back. Okay. So, but at the end of the day, a basic interactive system is these 4 steps. So what does that mean? Okay. If somebody says, okay, what was the query here? So best restaurants near me. Okay. So what Google did, this is the same page, google.com, right? So what Google is doing is best restaurants near me. So it is saying, okay, so it's capturing the information. So now what it is doing, it's also capturing your location, because you did not say best location, best restaurants near Cleveland. Okay. It is saying, oh, I'm going to go to some other service and say, okay, where is Prasad located? So it is taking that data. Okay, Cleveland. Okay, I've got the address, or I've got a zip code. So then it's saying best restaurants in Cleveland, Ohio. It is changing the query. So there is some processing that is happening. Then you're saying, okay, so you're going to a database of restaurants. And by the way, there's some software that is saying this is for restaurants. Or there's some system that is saying, go into this database. It's going into the database, looking up the list of restaurants. Then it is ordering those list of restaurants based on, what people, some range, either distance or cheap, a cost or whatever. Then it's presenting all that information. Then it's going to Google Maps, capturing the maps, overlaying the location on maps, and presenting that information to you on a screen. Okay. Now, the same Google, if you do another query, let's see how that works, right? So you're saying, okay, convert USD to Indian rupees. Okay. What is it doing? It's capturing that information. Then it's saying, okay, USD, it is converting. USD is US dollars. INR is Indian rupees. Okay. Then it is saying, okay, now if it is a conversion, I need to go into a database that is looking at currency rates right now. So it is going into that database and it is saying, get me the current rate. Then there is some kind of calculation component that is happening and you're seeing the final result there. And it's approaching Google Charts or whatever, saying, give me the charting API. And then it is presenting the prices over the charts. Correct? So this is basically the foundation of any interactive system. Okay. You are looking at what data you're getting, what output the user wants, and what processing you need to do in this middle to be able to deliver the whole experience. Okay. Now, if you want to learn how to do this, again, simple stuff. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So you have to learn form design. Okay. The guy who wrote the textbook on form design is this guy called Luke Reblowski. Okay. He has his textbook available for free online. Okay. It's available in a PDF format. So you should be able to download it and access it. Okay. So let's click on the textbook, the link, the PDF. Okay. This is going to be a fairly big document, but it's a complete presentation where he's talking about, okay, what are the best practices for form design? Okay. Now, the actual book itself has more information than this. So you may, but if you search for the PDF, I think it is available as well. But this is a presentation that Luke did. And you can just literally look at this, read this, understand it, and apply it. Okay. So this is one source that you need. And again, mandatory for every UX designer. Let's go back to the video and then look at the article. So form design, there's an article that I wrote that tells you how to approach form design. Okay. So again, scroll down. So the article that Luke wrote, the book that Luke wrote talks about the theory behind form design. I'm basically talking about how do you apply it? Because when Luke wrote this almost 20 years ago. So today, the amount of knowledge and the amount of different modalities that have come in are much more different. So how do you apply it in today's world, and how do you kind of think about the forms? This is what this article is talking about, is how to interpret all of that information to apply it for today's problems. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. And then there are 2 other videos. Okay, there are 3 other videos. Okay, now I'm not going to be clicking on all of these, but if you are on the LinkedIn, if you're on the WhatsApp group, we will share all these links with you. Okay. Now let's also click on UI pattern. This is a website that pretty much every designer needs to be aware of. Okay. You need to be spending at least 2 to 3 hours a day on this website. Okay. So when you're here, okay, literally it will tell you all the design pattern, and this is still a little bit outdated, but it is good because let's say getting input. How do I get input? Click on getting input. Okay, so here are all the different ways that you can get, people have implemented getting input. So I can use it as a password strength meter, or I can do expandable input, I can do structured format. So when you look at this, you are seeing, okay, what is all possible here? Okay. And so you are not recreating the wheel every time. Okay. So click on one of those, like the expandable input. Click on the expandable input. Okay. So here, the way it tells you is what is the problem that this designer is trying to solve. What does it look like? What does that design look like? Scroll down. Scroll down. Okay. So scroll down. So there is usage. When do you use it? Okay. Now scroll down. And why, what is the logic behind this design? So you are learning and understanding all of this. Okay. So it is important. And then right below that, you will see other ways that other people have also implemented it. Scroll down. Scroll down to the bottom. No. So there's, in this one, I guess there's no other implementations of it, or at least they have not identified it. But once you look at it, you will start realizing how the other implementations work and all that. Even if you look at, Facebook does the expandable component, LinkedIn does the expandable component. There's also the in mobile. So because this website, I do not think captures mobile patterns really well, but you can also see the same experience happening in mobile. So again, once you become aware of it, you become sensitized. Whenever you see these designs in the wild, okay, this is what the designer is trying to do. Okay. So this is, again, I would say at least 2 hours a day. Come in here, just click on it, take some time understanding, think about how they're doing this. Okay. Let's go back. All right. So if you just do this stuff, okay, you will have understood the basics of interactive, how to create an interactive product. Basics, okay? Enough to get you your first job. All right. So what do you need to do here? So you probably, if you're spending 2 hours a day, and you're practicing your form design, and you're spending your time on, executing it, this is another probably 6 weeks. Okay. Again, you have to be very disciplined about it. So 12 weeks is there. And the tool component that I talked about is you have to do your tools throughout the process. Okay. So if you do the tools on a daily basis and you kind of are doing this, it will become a part of the game. So while you're doing form design, you can play with tools as well. So there's no issue with it. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. This is the last kind of skill that you need to get your first job, which is executing basic visual design. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So basic visual design is what, somebody will tell you, create a screen for me, create this product for me. So, you are basically thinking through, okay, what are the screens, what are the products, what are all this stuff? So this is the basic stuff that you're going to do. Okay. So you're going to look at some kind of a UI and you're going to be generating screens. Okay. But how would you do it? If you want to learn again, in college or university, it's probably like a 6-month to a year-long program, depending on the type of program that you have. But again, it shouldn't take you that long. The quick way to do it is this. Let's go to the next slide. Design systems. Learn how to follow a design system. Okay. If you can follow a design system first, at some point, you will learn how to create your own design system. Okay. When you're a junior person, nobody will tell you create a design system for me. Okay. People will say, I've already created a design system, or they say, I want you to create a page like this or create a website like this. So what you're doing is you're understanding design systems and you're simply implementing the design systems. Okay. So what is a design system? So, Atlassian has its own design system, right? Jira has its own design system. Twitter has its own design system. So pretty much most of the big companies, even Google has its own design system. Apple has its design system. So what you need to do is you need to understand what are the most common design systems out there in the market. Okay. How are they talking about it? How are they presenting it? Okay. So the first thing that I want you to think about is forget the foundations. Like, I'm not going to focus on the foundations right now. Just click on material design. Okay. This is Google. Google has its own design system already set up. Okay. Spend, a week or so understanding how they have structured their design system. If you had to design, a product using the Google design system, how would you do it? Okay. So all of this information is already there. The components are there, the icons are there, everything is set up for you. Okay. So you can basically use this. So let's go click on some other design system if Google is giving an issue. Okay. This is the Apple iOS design system. So you can look at it. And again, iOS is really cool because it's actually talked about Vision iOS and Vision OS and, mobile stuff and, tablets and all that. So it's a lot more diverse in that sense. So all you need to do is look at it, understand the rules. What are the rules of using that design system to implement something? Okay. So that's all you need to do. And all of this documentation there, it'll probably take you an easy 1 week. Just look at it, read it, understand it, play with it. Okay. So, but it's just the understanding will take you about a week. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. You have Figma also has its own library set up for you. Okay. And that's also pretty good. So all you need to do is go look into these kits, understand how they're approaching it, understand the philosophy. It'll give you a jump start. Okay. Don't try to do everything from the ground up. And then there are some basic foundations. So there are articles and videos about how do you do consistency, how do you do grids and layouts, typography, colors, and all that. And typography, you don't need to know all the typographies. You just need to know like 2 or 3 good fonts and learn to execute them really well. Okay. Now, colors and all that stuff, yes, there's an article, there's a lot of theory, but again, there are ways that you can do it. You can, if you can leverage the design systems to do different kind of color combinations. So that's fine as well. Okay. So this is a fairly simple approach to doing this. And again, this should take you no more than about 4 to 5 weeks. Okay. What is more important is to be able to implement a design system. Any questions on this? Okay. So if you want to learn design, literally these are the 4 areas that you want to focus on. It will probably take you about 20 to 25 weeks. Okay. Now, one of the reasons that I do not recommend a lot of boot camps and programs like that is very simple. Most of them focus on tools. Now, if you notice all the things that I've talked about here, okay, only 25% of the stuff that I talked about is tools. Remaining 75% is the theory and understanding of how that theory applies and learning to apply that theory. Okay. So that is where you want to be spending your time. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So now how should you learn? Okay. Now, there are programs that will teach you, the master's programs and all that are there, that like, dedicated training programs and all that will teach you. And I think a good program is worth it if you have the time and the mindset to do it. And it actually helps you grow in your career much faster if you have the appropriate mindset. However, let's say you don't have the time, you still want to learn this simple stuff, right? Watch all those videos, read all that content, get some problems. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. So this is the part where you need to think, how are you going to approach it? So there are 3 strategies, 3 parts to learning. First is knowledge. Knowledge is okay. Oh, I know there is something like a form design. Good, I know that. Application, how do I apply that knowledge on some problem? So an application is, here's an offline form, can you digitize it? Okay, so you're applying that knowledge to digitize it. So you're basically saying, okay, so you're practicing that skill in a limited context to see whether it works or not. And the last one is execution. So in a large scale project, can you execute or not? Okay, where the ambiguity is very, very high. Okay, so these are the three parts to it. So in order to do all of these, what are the things you need to do? So when you are going through knowledge, it is important that you have a community that is equally as motivated. You need to learn, practice, and decide. These are the, practice and discuss. These are the three things you need to do when you're looking at knowledge. So you read it together, come back, discuss it, understand it, argue it out, and then, once that concept is good or get clarifications if required, but that knowledge component is done. Okay. The second part is where most people start failing. Okay. This is where you need a mentor. You can never, there may be exceptions to the rule, but the main thing is you can never learn how something works practically unless you learn from a mentor. Okay. So you need somebody who's conceptually strong in that, who's going to mentor you. Okay. This is what is a concept mentor. Okay. They're going to talk about the concept. You take a concept, you apply it, especially, for example, take an offline form, try to digitize it. Now you need to go sit down with a mentor, and the mentor has to give you feedback. Okay, you made a mistake here. You did that here. You did this here. So you're getting all that feedback here. So this is where you're getting conceptual feedback. Okay. Now, finally, when you get to the execution component, so you get a large project, now execute it. This is where you need a project mentor. The project mentor is looking at concept, but they're also looking at, well, what is your strategy? How are you approaching the project? What are your timelines? They're looking at everything as a whole. Okay. And they're giving you feedback at every step of the way in terms of, okay, your timeline is wrong. You did not estimate it correctly. Your hygiene is not correct, or this is where your complexity went out. This is the kind of feedback that a project level mentor will give you. Okay. So these are the three things you need to do to build your competency. Now, where do you get these mentors? Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. So, simple stuff. You can get mentors through LinkedIn or ADP list. Go find somebody who has the time and the availability. Okay. Now, the advice is simple. Again, what kind of mentor you take will define how your career goes. Okay. If your mentor knows the game, your career accelerates. Your mentor just started 6 months ago, or like they have 2 years of experience. They're saying, I'm a mentor. Then you're only going to go as far as your mentor is going, right? If your mentor has only seen 2 years of life, at the end of the day, your advice is only good for the first 2 years of your career, isn't it? You will not know if you learned something wrong. Whereas somebody has 10, 15 years of experience, they can tell you, yeah, don't do this because 5 years later, you will have a problem. Okay. So the kind of mentor you find defines how high you will go within that discipline. So this is where you need to start thinking. So when you're looking at your mentor, look at a mentor if they can explain something, if they have the rationale, if they have the understanding and the depth of thought about that specific concept. Now, ADP list is a really good resource because people are clearly there to mentor. But again, everybody today, unfortunately, everybody is a mentor on ADP list. And so what I would advise you is, if you are getting on ADP list, find people who are senior enough, who have the depth of understanding to be able to give you that specific feedback. Okay. Now, for example, if you go to somebody with 20 years of experience and say, give me concept level feedback, it's not worth it for them. Okay. Because it's such a small thing, for somebody with 20 years of experience, they're probably doing it unconsciously. Okay. They're probably not even thinking about it. Whereas if you go to somebody with 7 to 8 years of experience and you sit down with them and say, give me this kind of feedback, they will be happy to give you concept level feedback, because most likely that is what they're doing in their current job as well. Okay. Now, if you're going to someone, say project level feedback, so you want to go to people who are much more, who have a broader way of looking at things. So if you look at somebody with 12 to 15 years of experience, those folks will have a project level perspective, and then you can learn from them. Okay. And again, which kind of companies? Because again, you can have somebody who's worked as a graphic designer for 12 years and they're calling themselves UX. So be very careful which kind of mentors you're going to. So you have to do your homework. Okay. But the way you approach the mentors is pick a concept and request feedback. Don't say that, I'm going to talk to 10 people and get 10 feedback, because everybody will have their own perspective. And in the end, you will get confused. Okay. Go to one individual and ask for feedback from them. And then do not just post on LinkedIn and stuff like that. What do you guys think? Never do that, because that is the worst way to get feedback. Because essentially what happens is The people who will give you genuine feedback will be like, okay, I don't really, I don't know whether this person is trying to get genuine feedback or if they're just trying to showcase their work. So if you're showcasing and I give you bad feedback, you might take it personally. So that's where people will be very careful. So don't post on social media and say, give me feedback. That's not the right way to do it. And the other one is do not randomly select the first mentor you get. Okay. Be very careful, be very systematic, and also think about what the mentor would want. What can you do for the mentor? If the mentor is giving you 2 hours of their time, what can you do for them to help their life, to make their life easy for them? Okay, it's always a give and take. If you are respectful of the mentor's time and you're helping the mentor will be more interested in supporting you. Okay, so this is where it is. Any questions or thoughts at this point, guys? Awesome. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so now, if you're interested, there is also the college community where people are members also talk to each other and all that. So this is where you can come in and practice as well. So there's the community, you can learn more. And I would also advise you, for those of you that are already parts of the community, form your own groups. Okay. And say, okay, I'm going to do form design. How many people are interested in joining my form design group? Okay. Together, you start practicing, watching those videos, discussing it, you will accelerate much faster. Okay, cool. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, awesome. Let's go back, please. So there's Kishore, who's asking, I guess he's asking a question, which is minimum, let's see, how many weeks does it take if I study minimum learning full time? Okay. See, at the bare minimum, you're talking, you should be working, if you're doing full time, you're planning at least 3 months of practice, 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 practice. The concept itself might take you to read it up, will take you a day. Then you take the concept, practice it, practice it, practice it. Then you come back, go to a mentor, get the feedback, then redo it, fix it, correct it, then go back to the mentor. Then that first concept is done, go to the next concept, go to the next concept. So it'll take you a minimum of 3 months if you are devoted to it and you are focused. Okay, cool. And why do I say 3 months? Because you can say mathematically, the first module is 12 weeks, 6 weeks. The third module is 6 weeks. The fourth module is probably another 4 weeks. So 12 plus 4 is what, like 16 weeks. So why is he saying 3 months? The point is, you don't need to do all 3 of those modules. Okay, all 4 of those modules. Okay, so you can either drop the visual component and you can basically kind of, within the visual component, you can just do like how to follow a design system. If you understand that, that's good. So that will save you time. And then you can move a little bit faster. But again, at the end of the day, it's all about how you are practicing multiple skills at the same time. It's not saying I'll do only module 1 at one time. I'm doing module 1, module 2, module 3 at the same time. So you are learning and practicing everything at the same time. So, you'll be able to do it within 3 months. All right, go ahead, Achyut. You have a question? You have to unmute yourself, Achyut.
Yeah, I just did. Good evening, sir. Yeah,
Hey.
I'm sorry, there's no proper lighting at my end. So I had one question to ask with regards to the level of mentors that we approach, right? So, and one thing, so thank you so much for this initiative. I can really vouch personally just by form design how I could crack my first job. That I can definitely vouch. Thanks for College. I was curious to know. At what point in my career do I seek the mentorship on a project level mentor? Because is it like right from the beginning, will it be valuable if I seek a project level mentor's guidance, or would it increase the ambiguity when I'm trying
The
to
project
grasp the
level mentors generally tend to think from multiple perspectives.
right?
Okay. And when you are starting off in the beginning, it might be very overwhelming and scary when the project guy is saying, today they give you one feedback, tomorrow they're giving you a third feedback, the second feedback, day after tomorrow they give you a third feedback. Everything seems different. Okay. So
Correct.
it could be
Yeah.
very scary for somebody who's just starting off to deal with a project level mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what you need to do within the first 3 months is you're working purely with concept level mentors who are giving you feedback at that level.
Okay.
Okay. Now, once you do all of that stuff, then you can say, once I've learned these main concepts, then you can say month 4, if you have, the mindset and all that, you go to a project level mentor. And you can say, okay, so I want to do a project. Can you give me feedback? You give me a sample project, or I will choose a project, right? And I'm going to do this. And so the project level mentor will give you feedback at that level.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So in fact, what Mukesh and Aruni did was exactly that. They were doing their AI product or project, and that was the project, and I was giving them the feedback. So they were implementing that feedback over time and multiple times. And again, because they're working part-time, it took them a good 6 months to do it, 6 or 4 months to do it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But
Yeah.
again, at a project level, you're going to get the same, you are going to get that feedback, from multiple perspectives, but because you're strong on your concept, you are better able to understand the perspective that the mentor is giving you.
Got it. Got it, sir. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions, guys? Okay. So with that, we will end this event today then. We will see you next week. Okay. Can you guys turn on your cameras so we can say bye to each other? Awesome. Okay. Chalo then. Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you very much, Prasad.